Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is when a woman proposes marriage to her man. I was scrolling the internet the other day and I came across this article. I was looking for a sports article to read, and this just popped up in my feed, and it piqued my interest. Let's just say that. But the article talked about giving tips for a woman when she wants to propose marriage to her man. And I found it interesting because in the grand scheme of things, it's not something that I've ever considered. Full disclosure, for those of you who don't know, I am married. At the time of this recording, I've been married 24 years. This year will be 25 in September. And it's crazy to think that we've been together this long. As many of you know, my wife Sharice and I met in college on the campus of South Carolina State University. And we started dating, and we dated for about 5 years, and then we got married. So we've been together for the better part of damn near 30 years. We got married in 2000, September 23rd, 2000. So the idea of marriage and proposals, is foreign to me. I'm the old washed married guy, right? But I do have an opinion about this article. And what I want to do on this episode is kind of walk you through some of the ideas or concepts that the article proposed for women. And then I'm going to give you my opinion on the idea or the concept of a woman proposing to a man. Now, full disclosure, again, I got married in 2000. I proposed to my wife on December 31st, 1999. I remember it because I proposed because I thought the world was coming to an end. Shout out to Y2K. If you know, you know. But seriously, I do remember the proposal. I do remember everything about that day, everything about that moment. I remember shopping for engagement rings and the whole nine. And our situation was different because, again, we had dated for a while. This was someone who I knew, like the back of my hand. We had constantly talked about marriage. At the time that I proposed, our son Dion was he was born in August, so he was a couple of months old. Now, I didn't get married or didn't propose, because we had a kid, because the reality is kids aren't going to save a marriage. So that went out the window. But the flip side of it is that we had a dynamic there already, and we were living together at the time as well. So it was almost like the natural progression. But, I did not want to propose until I felt like we were ready to take that step. Now, did we do it the way that our parents would have wanted it? Probably not, because, idealistically, your parents want you to graduate from school, which we both did, get married, live together, and then have a child. Well, we lived together in college, and we had a kid after we got out of college, and then we got married. So we did it reverse, but it all worked out, right? But the flip side of it is, if you go back to the year 2000, I would venture to say that there weren't probably a lot of women who were asking their man to marry them. In fact, I don't know anybody at the time who would have proposed to their man. And I know many women who were in situations like me where they had been in long-term relationships and were living together and maybe had kids together. and they would eventually get married. But I don't really recall any woman in my circle or even that I remotely knew who would have proposed to their man. Um, but this article talks about this, and I wanted to kind of discuss the concept with you all. Um, so the first question is, can a woman propose to a man? And the answer is obvious. Yes, of course they can. No matter how you identify, male, female, transgender, LGBTQIA, and the rest. You can't let societal norms determine when you get engaged or how you get engaged. If you feel that the moment's right, you take a leap of faith and you ask your partner. That's what the article advises. So, yeah, a woman can propose to a man. Obviously, we've seen this happen. I've seen videos on social media. I'm sure many of you have. I've seen pictures. Um, I've seen celebratory events where the proposal was relatively small, and I've seen uh, videos where the proposals were very big and in a very public forum. So it goes without saying that it can be done several different ways. But that is a possibility, and there's something that has happened. Again, I can't necessarily say that it was happening in 2000, but in the year 2025, this current year, it's probably something that happens more often than we're willing to admit. One of the other things the article talked about was, it says, don't let society determine your decision. And it goes on to say, if you're wondering why every woman doesn't ask her boyfriend to marry them, there are two reasons. The first reason is because of tradition. Historically, it's customary for the man in a heterosexual relationship to ask the woman. He would get down on one knee and propose, since he's usually, and I use air quotes, the financial provider. And the second reason is because of societal norms. In some conservative minds, it's the thought of the woman asking the man to marry her is too assertive, unfeminine, bossy, or rushing the relationship. There's even, worry that the woman could make the man feel emasculated. That's what the article said, and there's some very truth to what I just read to you. Um, it's very possible that all of the above could happen. But they are advising that you not let society dictate or determine, whether or not you should propose to your man or not. Um, I will say this: it is customary, it is tradition, it is going against a societal norm for a woman to ask a man in marriage, for their hand in marriage. I mentioned I got engaged on December 31st, 1999. Not only was the world coming to an end, or at least that's what they said, but I did it the traditional way. It was just the two of us. I got on a knee and I asked for her hand in marriage. And she was shocked. She wasn't shocked because uh, she was shocked at the proposal. She was shocked at the time in which it was done, because I think, if I'm looking back on it, I think she probably thought I was going to propose on Christmas, and I didn't. I had the ring on Christmas, but I did not propose on Christmas. I wanted to do it on New Year's Eve. I'm not sure why, but I did it, and we did it in the privacy of our apartment. And obviously she said yes, because why wouldn't she say yes? Who wouldn't want to be married to me, right? but but nonetheless, we followed tradition. In fact, I even kind of broke tradition, because it is normal for a man to reach out to the young lady's family, particularly her father, if there or a father figure, and quote unquote ask for her hand in marriage. Um, I didn't do that. I did not even though I knew my future father-in-law, I did not ask him for her hand in marriage. I want to say I called him the next day and said, "Hey, uh, we're getting married. I think that's how it went. It's funny because I don't even remember, but I do know I did not ask. And I think what I've told my sons, we have 3 sons. At the time of this recording, they're 25, 22, and 18. What I've told them as far as their relationships are concerned, when it gets to that point, they probably should reach out to the father figure or of their potential bride to find out if it's okay. More often than not, I think most men are going to say, "Hey, yeah, it's fine that you can ask." It's a level of respect thing, type of thing. We also have a daughter. She's 13. I mean, obviously, it will be years from now before she gets married, but I would want the same thing. I would want a young man to ask me. But again, it's what the article talks about is they want you not to be swayed by society, which in the year 2025, that's hard to do. And one of the last things that they mentioned in the article is to consider your partner's stance on marriage. Before learning how to propose to a man, you should think about how they feel about marriage. Have you had conversations about marriage? Have you discussed the possibility of a marriage and your future, and what it looks like? Before popping the question, you and your significant other should be on the same page. That's the advice that they pass along, and I agree. I think, at least from a distance, what I see is I think there's a lot of people who are really, really married to the idea of getting married, but really have no clue or concept as far as what marriage is going to entail. And I get it to some degree because, like, I can tell you how it is in a football game, or a football game may look a certain way from the stands, but it's not until you're in the game that you understand that you're in the game, right? So it's one of those things where someone can tell you about it, but until you're actually in it, you really don't know. But I think people definitely have to be on the same page as far as what their level of expectation is as far as marriage, their ideas, everything in between, how you will handle finances, possibility of children, so forth and so on. Every scenario that you will incur in a marriage, I think you should talk about prior to getting married. You don't know what you know until you're there. But if it's a situation where, let's just say, you want to get married to someone and you want 5 kids and your partner only wants one, or your partner doesn't want any kids at all, that could be problematic. In fact, that will be problematic because that's not good. You need to be on the same page or at the very least have conversations as to what you both want, because in the end, you may realize that this really isn't a person that you should be getting married to. I tell people all the time, like, getting married is the easy part, the part of going through a wedding. And I know that a lot of people put a lot into a wedding, and weddings, don't get me wrong, the weddings are beautiful. But I always tell people weddings last 25 minutes. You have to prepare yourself for a marriage, and marriage is supposed to last a lifetime. There's no end in marriage. The only end that's supposed to happen in a marriage is death. So you're playing a game that never ends. And that's something that if you don't mentally prepare for, then you're going to prepare to fail at. But ultimately, they give some good reasons as to why you should consider, as a woman, you should consider proposing to your man. We're going to take a commercial break, and on the other side of the break, I will tell you why I think it's a horrible idea for a woman to propose to a man. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories.
rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes.
And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle Podcast, and this is a bonus episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. Again, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate all of you watching in on the YouTube. As I mentioned before the break, the article talks strictly about and giving women pointers for if and when they should propose to their man. I told you before the break, I'm not a fan of this idea for what it's worth. So I'm going to give you my 12 cents as to why I don't think that a woman should propose to a man. And I've got three simple things. One, it breaks tradition. As I mentioned, I followed the tradition. I got down on one knee. My proposal was very, very, in my opinion, very cool and very suave. I presented Sharice with a box. I think it was a shoe box. It was a shoe box. So it was a shoe box. And in the shoe box, it was there was a big box, right? And so she's wondering, like, why are you giving me this gift after Christmas? And in the box was a smaller box. And then that next box, after you open that box up, was a shoe box. And in the shoe box, she's thinking, okay, you bought me some shoes. But the shoe box, when she opened it, she realized that it was a Nike box. So she's like, well, why? You bought me Nikes. So she's thinking, okay, I bought her some sneakers, right? And then she opens the Nike box, and in the Nike box, there's a cleat. And so now she's befuddled because she's looking at it like, well, why are you giving me a cleat? I don't play football. I don't play softball. What is this, right? And then inside the cleat, there was a smaller box, and she was able to go in the cleat and pull out the smaller box. And in that smaller box was the ring. And she opened it up, and it was our engagement ring. And at that moment, I got down on one knee and I asked her to marry me. I didn't do this in front of a bunch of people. I didn't do it at the Hawks game on the Jumbotron. There was no crowd to say she said yes. I just asked her, would she do the honor of, marrying me and making me the happiest man in the world? And she started crying, and she said yes, obviously. And we hugged each other and kissed each other. And it was cool. It was dope. It was a moment that we shared, private. Could I have done it in front of a bunch of people? I could have, but I'll be honest, I'm not really a public person like that. For a guy who has a podcast, I'm a very private person, right? Particularly when it comes to my relationships, and more in particular, my marriage. But I stuck to the tradition. Like I said, I got down on one knee. I kept it simple. I did what I had to do, and it was our moment. It wasn't something for social media. It wasn't something for Facebook and Instagram. It wasn't something for clicks and likes. It was tradition. And I think that that's what a man should do. He should keep with the tradition, and he should be the one to ask the woman to marry him, not the other way around. I don't want to sound like it's chauvinistic or anything like that, because it's not. I do believe in equal rights. I just think like some things should be left to how it used to be. And I think that this is one of those things that you have to leave it to how it used to be, because how it used to be was really okay. The second thing, the article mentioned that for you not to be swayed by society's standards. I will say this, and I'll stand on this point. If your woman proposes to you, it does not look good for you in the eyes of other men. Let me say that again. If your woman proposes to you, right? If she gets down on one knee and she proposes marriage to you, it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter how you feel. as a man, it does not look good in the eyes of other men that your woman proposed to you and you did not propose to your woman. Now I know that there probably some of you are saying, well, what do you care about what other men think? The reality is you do care what other men think. One thing that someone brought to my attention that was very interesting was that both men and women told me as I was shopping for Sharice's engagement ring, I kept hearing people say, well, the ring is about what she likes or what she wants, but it's also about how it looks to her, particularly how others will look at it. And so as a man, you're buying the ring for her, but you're also buying the ring for other women to see. And you're also buying the ring for other men to see. And the ring symbolizes who you are. And so it was important for me to get a ring that she liked, obviously. And then it was also important for me to get a fly ring. Now, I've seen guys break the bank as far as rings are concerned. Now, I didn't have a lot of money back then. So I got the ring that I could afford that, fit her hand and everything. But she loved the ring. And what's weird is that I've often thought about, upgrading the ring and getting it bigger and all of this stuff like that. Of course, I don't want, I don't want to put something on her hand that somebody's going to chop off her finger, trying to rob her. But, I feel like I can, and, at some point probably will upgrade the ring. Maybe that would be a nice not engagement. Maybe that would be a nice 25th anniversary gift. We'll see. Stay tuned. But the ring, when you purchase the ring, it is not just for her, it is for others to see. You always see with the engagements, you always see the woman dangling the ring in front of a camera or dangling the ring in front of a phone, and everybody comments on how big the ice is and how big the rock is and everything like that. So the idea is that you're really doing it in a lot of ways for other people. And this doesn't exclude how men view it. And as a man, you're not going to look the same if your lady proposed to you as opposed to you proposing to your lady. Let me say this, and I can only speak for me and my crew. And my crew knows who they are. And listen, if anybody in the crew didn't propose to their woman, we'd probably joke them. And it wouldn't be good. Like it would be, it's not a good look. I guess in essence, that's basically what I can tell you. It's not a good look. And last but not least, and this is just, again, my personal opinion, I think it looks desperate. I think it looks like the woman is trying to, quote unquote, hang on to her man or to snag her man. And here's the thing. If you're at the point in your relationship where you're ready to get married, why not let him be the one doing the proposing? Why are you proposing? It looks like it's a desperate move. Like it's almost like I have to propose to him before someone else snatches him up. I have to reach out and grab him before somebody takes him from me. No, that's not the case. But I think when a woman proposes to a man, I think it looks desperate on the woman's behalf. And I think psychologically, and I know this may not go well with women, and I want to apologize before I say it, but vibe with me on this one. I think psychologically it gives a man an advantage that the woman really, really wants him. And maybe, just maybe she wants him more than he wants her, if she's the one to pull the trigger on the proposal. I think if a man proposes to a woman, then more than likely, particularly if she says yes, that they're on the same page. They're 50-50, right? But I think if a woman proposes to a man, it's 75-25. And that's not to say that even if he accepts, because we're assuming that he's going to accept, but even the flip side of that, think about that for a second. Let me back up. What if she proposes and he says no, or he says, I need to think about it? That's not good at all. And all of these things could be coming into play as to why he said no. Maybe because you broke the tradition. Maybe because he does feel emasculated. Maybe because it doesn't look good to other men. Maybe, just maybe, it looks very desperate. Again, I know a lot of women. I have a lot of female friends. I have a ton of female friends that I have a lot of love and respect for from college and high school. I don't know of any woman that would propose to a man. And that's just me. I mean, like, I can only tell you just from my circle and network of friends. I don't know of any. And maybe, just maybe, some of you out there listening, please hit me up on social media, hit me up on the DMs, hit me up where in the comment section on YouTube, comment section on Spotify. Let me know if you would propose to your man, or better yet, if you're married, let me know if you have proposed to your man, because there could be someone listening who did that. I don't know that's necessarily that you're out there, but if you are, please let me know. And again, I pass no judgment. All of what I said, I pass no judgment. But I do think, ultimately it does look desperate. And I think psychologically, it gives a man a supreme edge over a woman psychologically, because in the back of his mind, you asked him. And it's totally different from, when we were coming up. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. So I'm from the go together era. I remember when girls would send you a note. Would you go with me? Check yes, check no, check maybe so. And that era was very special, and it was cool because, like, even if you ask, and yes, okay, I'll be honest. Were there girls that asked me to go with them? Yes, it happened. And that's cool, but that was, 88. So it was a different day and time. And I'll be honest, a couple of times where I've had girls ask me to go with them, we were young. We were, we weren't experienced or anything like that. It wasn't in like high school, or definitely wasn't in college or anything like that. And going together, asking somebody to be your man is totally different from you asking someone for their hand in marriage till death do us part. Totally different, right? And so again, in my opinion, I think it breaks tradition. I think it doesn't look good to other men. And I think ultimately it looks desperate. I could be wrong, but I'm probably not. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. And from time to time, we drop bonus episodes like this one on Sundays at midnight. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. We're on every streaming platform. You can't miss us. And if you're on social media, hit us up. We're on Twitter X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and the TikTok, 12 Kyle podcast. Also, if you want to contribute to the show financially, hit us up. Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. As well as you can buy merch. We do offer merch. Click the link in the description box that says merch. Right there, you will find 12 Kyle podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. And don't forget, we have a new baby. We have a new venture. It is called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is a new podcast venture by me. It is where we discuss music and ideas and concepts, discussions about rap music, soul music, hip hop, R&B from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. It is the best music podcast you've never heard. So you definitely need to check it out. You can find the Rap Soul podcast wherever you find podcasts, wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if I didn't mention it before, hit us up on YouTube. We got 12 Kyle podcasts on YouTube, as well as the Rap Soul podcast on YouTube as well. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.